Hello there, and welcome to the Good Old Days of Radio show. This is John Tefteller, your host. It is Tuesday, and on Tuesday we normally have some kind of wacky comedy or interesting drama, and we are going to do that. But we also have a special guest who's going to be with us for a few shows. He is what I would describe as a legendary figure in the world of old-time radio. I don't know if he would describe himself as legendary. I'll let him decide that. But I will describe him as legendary. It is Mr. J. David Goldin, who I guess I can refer to as Dave. Is that correct, Mr. Goldin?
Yes, it's correct, and the only legendary character I can think of is Robin Hood.
Oh, well, okay. Well, I hope we're not the same as Robin Hood, but we'll...
I steal from the rich and give to me.
Okay. Well, for those who don't know who you are, I will give a little bit of background here. Modern day old-time radio fans are probably most aware of you because of the Radio Goldin Index, which is a very vast and deep internet site where anyone who's interested in finding out what radio programs exist, who was on them, and all kinds of minute little details can go, and they can look it up and search it, and it tells them all this great stuff, and you are the man behind the Radio Goldin Index. We can talk a little bit more about that later. You have been a professional broadcaster since 1963. You produced over 300 LP records. That's long play records for you young folks. That's 33 1/3 record for the rest of you. You had 6 Grammy nominations, congratulations, and 1 actual Grammy in 1981, and we can find out in a little bit what that was all about. You founded a company called Radio Yesteryear, which anybody who ever collected old-time radio shows going back to the late 60s or so would be familiar with Radio Yesteryear because you were the first company in the entire country to sell vintage radio programs. I think you also had some involvement with Murray Hill Records, and I love the name Michael Raffoni. Is that one of your pseudonyms?
It is, and it's pronounced Michael Rophone, as in Mike Rophone.
Yes, I know. I said it wrong. Microphone. I was thinking of the Three Stooges short, but that's okay. All right. So, welcome to the Good Old Days of Radio show, Dave Goldin.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. This is the very first podcast I've ever been on, and I would say it's the very first podcast I've ever listened to, except I'm not really listening. But
you're talking. You can listen to it later when it actually is available to listen to.
All right, but I wanted you to know that it's only because of you, John Tefteller, that I am appearing at all. I don't do podcasts. I've never heard one, actually. But I couldn't say no to you, John, because you had a half Nelson on me. And so he said, yes, it's my pleasure.
Okay. Well, I know you don't do very many interviews either, so I consider it an exclusive here. How's that?
An excruciating exclusive. My pleasure.
Let's hope it's not too excruciating. All right. Let's start with you were, I guess, what we would say legendary, although you might not use that term. But how about, let's say, a pioneer in the early days of collecting vintage radio shows? Does that sound better?
You're pausing for a response. Yes. Okay. I was one of the early members of DRAT, and that's a organization you've probably never heard of. Because
it has something to do with W.C. Fields, right?
No, it had to do with the dramatic radio tape collectors. Dramatic radio, I forget what the T was. But I was one of 21 guys who got together back in 1961 because we were interested in old radio, and actually I was interested in the genre before that, but I didn't start to collect radio programs until about 1960, 61.
Okay, well, that's really early because I didn't start doing anything until the early 70s, and most of the people that I know who are older than me, most of them started in the mid 60s or early 70s. So you have to be back before that. You beat that one.
I also have more birthdays than almost anyone has under their belt. My middle name is becoming Methuselah.
Well, keep having birthdays. That's good. That's good.
Thank you.
So, in those early days of collecting radio shows, early days, 1961, hey, Suspense and Johnny Dollar were still on the air at that point.
Yes, they were. And it's interesting you mentioned those two because I had a night job. I was a night watchman in a small company in Mount Vernon, New York that manufactured transformers. And there's not much going on at night in a transformer factory. And so I spent most of the evening listening to radio. And I actually heard the announcement that Johnny Dollar and Suspense were being concluded, would not be on next week. And my reaction was, well, I can't say that on the air, but it was one of disappointment.
Okay, and there were still a few soap operas on too, though, were there not?
Actually, I think there was one or two on till 1962.
Right.
But my favorites when I first started collecting were X-1, and before that, what was before X-1?
Dimension X?
Yes, of course, Dimension X. I used to listen to those and record them. You also listen to CBS on Sunday nights, starting at 10 p.m. You'll never guess what was on then, so I'll tell you.
Okay.
They were radio band remotes. And I recorded every band remote that I heard and never considered that one day I would actually be doing those same band remotes. So, yeah, I started recording almost as soon as I had a tape recorder and fortunately kept almost everything.
Well, 1961, X-1 wasn't on the air at that point. How were you recording those?
I wasn't.
Oh.
I was listening to them since I was a kid. My
okay.
grandma, bless her soul, my grandma got me a General Electric AM/FM radio, and I'm sure almost everybody has a similar story of the radio they first met. They're almost as much fun as girls. But with my AM/FM radio, I could listen, and that's what I did. We had a television, but my mother and father watched what they liked, and I went into the bedroom and listened to what I liked.
Okay, so you were not a fan of early television. You got right into radio at an early age. How old?
Well, I can almost pinpoint it exactly. For my 13th birthday, my mother, at my request, bought me a tape recorder. It was a Voice of Music, and I broke it within 2 weeks. My second one was a Revere tape recorder. I think it was called the TR-12, but I'm not really sure. And one of the advantages of that Revere tape recorder with a built-in radio was that it could record AM without without much static and interference. So that was right up my alley, and I recorded those band remotes almost every week.
So what time period was this? In the mid-50s or early 60s? Where are we at?
We're talking about 1957 on.
Okay, so
and
big band remotes. The big band era was basically over at that point, but they still had big bands that were playing at night, I guess.
Yeah, CBS continued the big band broadcasts on Sunday night up until, I would guess, about 1973 or 4. Now, I did those programs as the engineer at the nightclubs and the dance halls in New York from 19, it would have been 1969, 70, 69 and 70. I did many of them in New York.
Okay. So I guess that must mean you're a big fan of the big band style of music.
Well, yes and no. The big bands weren't as big in 1969 as they were in 1949.
That's true.
And it was interesting because it was interesting to me because I had two remotes scheduled every week. One was on during the week, and it was at the Empire State Building. There was a bar, saloon, nightclub in the basement called the Riverboat, and they featured big bands. And I thought it was amusing that here I am in the basement of the Empire State Building, and a few years before that, I was in master control at WOR Television, which was on the 86th floor of the Empire State Building. So I took an 87-floor reduction in rank. The other band remote I did was on 53rd Street at the Roseland Dance City, which was still in existence up until just a few years ago. And every Sunday night, they had two bands. One was for us old folks that played swing and good listening music. And between sets for that band, they had a Latin band for the cha-cha devotees. This was a dance studio, ballroom, I should say, and it was really for dancing. There was a stage. There were approximately 13, 14, 15 musicians. There was an announcer, and I was on the stage. There was no place for me to hide. So I was on the stage with my remote amplifier, and people would ask, "Are you on the radio?" And I said, "No, I'm sitting in a chair." And the announcer would say the same joke every week. Can you guess? No, you can't. So I'll tell you what the joke was. Every week, almost every announcer said this at one time or another when there was an audience. He would say, "We have 5 minutes to go in case anybody has to." And at that point, I would break tone. Break tone is an expression in radio to let the people at Master Control know that the program is going to begin shortly. In other words, wake up. And sure enough, at the correct time, the announcer would throw a cue, and the band leader would throw it right back, and we were off and running. So it was fun. It was exciting. It was real radio.
Okay. So now into collecting older programs. In 1962, 63, 64, where would one go to get vintage radio programs at that point?
That's a good question, and a very good question. And it involved, of all things, race music of the 1920s. Now, I don't think you know much about that.
No,
John.
I don't know anything about that. So, no, we'll have to just gloss over that one. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I was interested in collecting 78s. And you might know, no, I don't think you would. Maybe you would know of Frankie Half Pint Jackson.
Of course I know Frankie
him?
Half Pint Jackson. Yes, he recorded for Black Patty. He recorded for Vocalion. He recorded for Decca. He was a little guy with a kind of a high squeaky voice, sounded like a girl, and he made a lot of kind of jump blues records.
What can I say? I didn't think anybody remembered Frankie Half Pint Jackson.
I have a picture of Frankie Half Pint Jackson, an original photo of him taken in a studio in Chicago where he's dressed all up in a tuxedo and he's got a little conductor's wand with him. He's conducting an orchestra or something in the picture. It's very nice.
Well, he grew up quite a bit and had to change his name to Frankie Two Quart Jackson. But
Anyway, so this
anyway, yeah.
relates to race records in some way. Go ahead.
All right, so I started collecting them with the help of an older collector, and you being one of the legends of record collectors, if I can coin the term, you might remember Les Zeger.
No, I don't know who that
Okay,
is.
well, he was a race jazz collector who lived a short distance from me in the Bronx, and Les, since he had gotten out of the army after the war, he was a small, meek little guy. His entire apartment was filled with records, 78 records of mostly race jazz from the 20s and maybe even before. But I was mostly interested in the 30s or late 20s when Duke Ellington was known as the Washingtonians. And I never liked Duke Ellington after he started honking and squeaking. I liked him back when he was the Jungle Band.
Yes.
That was my kind of thing.
Okay.
And I had a driver's license at the time, and Les did not. So I would drive around quite a distance to buy collections for Les. And I went as far as Oklahoma once, and it was supposed to be an Indian who had collected records back in the day and had them and wanted to sell them. Well, it turned out the Indian was actually an oil field worker, and the records were up in the attic where it was approximately 200 degrees, and I had to bring them down, load them in the Dodge that I had bought. Remember fluid drive? This Dodge had a fluid drive. It had a clutch that you could use if you wanted, or you didn't use if you didn't want. Anyway, I'm digressing. So that was the furthest that I ever went for Les to buy records, and I would go to Washington and upstate New York, and we would have a good time together. Then came the day, if I can get back on track, when I noticed Les's collection of transcriptions.
Uh-huh.
And one of the first things he let me borrow, and here's something I don't think anybody else has or would want, were 240 episodes of Way Down East. It was a soap opera from about 1934, I think, with Agnes Moorehead and a movie star who I'm tempted to say Van Heflin, but I don't think he was old enough. It was a movie star like that, and I listened to 240 episodes and became besotted. I then borrowed all the 16-inch discs that Les would lend to me, and he was quite generous, and I recorded them, and that's how my collection started.
With a show called Way Down East, and you still have 200 episodes of that somewhere?
Yes, yes, I do. It was the first long, continuous string of programs I had for some time. It was based on the movie.
Yeah, there was a movie with Mary Pickford, I believe, or Lillian Gish.
You're right.
Mary Pickford or Lillian Gish or both, but yes.
And who was the male lead? I guess it was Richard Bartholomew. But I don't know. Somebody's looking it up at this moment.
Yeah. All the people are Googling it right as we're listening to this.
Okay, so that started it, and I then discovered a record store in Manhattan it was on Lower Broadway near 13th Street called Eichler's. And I don't think anybody listening in would remember Eichler's unless they were at least 75. Eichler's had a strange store. He wouldn't sell LPs. He mostly sold junk, scrap records. 78s were like $1 each. And in the basement, if old man Eichler liked you enough, he would let you into the basement to scrounge among the 16-inch records. And most of what I found down there were 16-inch records pressed by Charlie Michelson. Michelson pressed The Shadow, of course, and Adventures by Morse. I think, didn't he do that? Or one similar to it. But all the Charlie Michelson syndicated shows were in the basement. And I'm sorry I didn't buy more. I didn't have that much ready cash. But I would drop $10 a week easily at Eichler's basement. And so there I am, off and running, with my collection growing. And at one point, I assumed I had found just about all there was to find. I had no idea how much there was or where it was. And I was wrong. There was a few more records to collect and programs to listen to.
A few more, like a few 100,000 more.
Well, it's getting there.
Yeah, it's getting there. Okay, so we're in the 1964 or so with these discs from this record store. At some point, I believe it's you that is credited with getting a lot of original transcription discs from WOR Radio. Is that correct?
Oh, that's getting ahead.
Getting ahead. Well,
yeah, it helps if you're making a salad. In 1963, I dropped out of New York University because I got a job at a radio station in Alaska. And I was there for some time. I eventually went back to NYU and finished. Got my degree in radio production and direction, which in 1964, why anybody would want that kind of degree is beyond me, but that's all I was interested in by then was radio. There were several radio stations around New York City where I worked. One was WVIP in Mount Kisco, there off the air. Another one, and this could be the subject of two other broadcasts, was WHBI-FM, which was licensed for Newark, New Jersey, but transmitted atop the Ritz Hotel on 5th Avenue and 57th, maybe 58th Street. It was the kind of place where I once met Goodman Ace in the elevator. But that station is a legend, and boy, can I tell stories about that. Many of them not repeatable in mixed company.
Well, then let's save those for for another day somewhere. This show is known for being able to be played in mixed company. That's what we do here. So
I figured. And by the way, we haven't played any radio shows.
Well, we're getting to that. In fact, I was going to just about say we're going to continue with your history and all of that, but we're going to pause a little bit here. I want you to tell me who was your favorite radio comedian. I think I know, but go ahead and tell me.
My favorite radio comedian was Jack Benny, of course.
Jack Benny, right?
No contest.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to read something that you sent me because I think this is fascinating. This relates to you doing something that nowadays they call a bucket list thing. Back then, there was no such thing as a bucket list. I think the bucket list originated in a movie with Morgan Freeman or something, but that's where I think that term came from. But you had a bucket list item. I'm saying this because that's everybody now will understand what I mean. You had a bucket list item that you wanted to do. And you sent me a little thing that was I guess this is an advertisement or something. It says fantasy broker. If you are a postal clerk and you want to be a stand-up comedian for one night, or a businessman who wants to drive a freight train across the western states, or a psychiatrist...
That was me, by the way.
Okay. A psychiatrist who wants 20 dates on 20 weekends with 20 girls from 20 different countries, How would you accomplish that? Well, they see a fantasy broker whose business is making dreams come true. Originally pioneered in Chicago by an advertising executive, fantasy firms in several cities now do a booming business, charging from $150 to thousands to turn dreams into a reality. Fantasy Fulfillment Institute in Washington, D.C. did $2,500 worth of business as a result of an ad that read, quote, "You can do anything you want. Drive a Formula race car, ride a camel down Pennsylvania Avenue at 3 p.m., live in a ghost town, float across the Potomac on a magnificent barge with 100 slaves." That you won't be able to do today. Or kiss a buffalo. Anyway, you actually hired this guy to make your bucket list item or your fantasy item come true. And that fantasy item was you wanted to meet Jack Benny, right?
That's correct. That was my first fantasy item. And before we go into that, the second fantasy item was, and I'm pleased that I actually did this. I said I wanted to be a clown in the circus. And they actually got me doing an act with Emmett Kelly, who was one
most
of the
famous clown of all time. Yes.
Yes. So I was made up in a clown uniform by the other clowns in Clown Alley, and I appeared in one performance of Circus America with Emmett Kelly, and I'm very proud of that because who wouldn't want to act in the circus at one time or another, or run away to the circus? No, I didn't get paid, by the way.
But you had to pay this guy. You had to pay this guy to get you in the circus with Emmett Kelly, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, all right. And now comes Jack Benny. Explain this one.
Can I hold off just a minute?
Oh, okay, go ahead. We can have one more.
The other two fantasies that this guy lined up for me didn't work out. I was the guy in that ad or that write-up that wanted to drive a diesel freight train across the western desert. Not a passenger train, not a steam train. It had to be a diesel locomotive hauling boxcars.
And why did you want to do that?
I couldn't tell you. It was just something I wanted to do.
Okay.
I mean, that's what a fantasy is. By the way, one of the first things the owner of this company told me was no sexual fantasies. He said, and I quote, "I am not a pimp," unquote. And it's a good thing he told me because my first fantasy was leaning in that direction with Jack Benny far behind. But in any event, because of a union jurisdiction problem, I was never able to drive that diesel locomotive, but I did, years later, hire a diesel switcher in upstate New York. I think it was, where's the Baseball Hall of Fame?
Cooperstown.
Yeah, there was a short-haul railway, and I rented a locomotive and a couple of boxcars from these people were willing, although I had to hire a licensed engineer and also a fireman and also a flagman because this railroad had unguarded street crossings. So, but I'm getting off the topic. That was my third fantasy that he wasn't able to do. And the fourth fantasy, which was really off the wall, he was able to do, and I chickened out. My fantasy was I wanted to get a job in Antarctica without joining the Navy. And at that time, the only people, this is now going back 40, 50 years, the only kind of people they had in Antarctica, at least Americans, were Navy personnel supporting the scientists who were there during the Antarctic winter. And would you believe he got me a job? Fortunately, I'm a licensed radio engineer, and radio engineers are in demand down there. And I was called in for an interview, at which I found out that the minimum contract time in Antarctica was 6 months. And my wife wasn't too keen on that. We had a young daughter at the time, and I was running a business, and so I reluctantly had to say no, but I had to pay for my fantasy anyway because he did it. I could have accepted the job in Antarctica without joining the Navy. So there. Okay, let's get to Jack Benny.
Yes, let's get to Jack Benny.
I'm sorry, I love telling those stories. By the way, whatever happened to this guy? I can tell you, I was coming back for my 5th fantasy when his name was Charles, by the way. I called him Chuck. Chuck said to me, Dave, I'm not taking any more fantasies because I'm folding the business and now I'm going to live my fantasies. And we had dinner together on a restaurant on the Potomac and said goodbye, and that was the end of fantasy fulfillment. But damn it, he got me into see Jack Benny, and he got me a job in the circus as a clown.
All right, so tell the Jack Benny story, and then we're going to listen to an episode of Jack Benny selected by you for the Good Old Days of Radio show.
Okay, so I got to meet Jack Benny at lunch. It was, I'm trying to remember the restaurant. I don't think anybody cares. It might have been Harvey's, which was a very famous restaurant in Washington, D.C., where every president at that time had eaten there, going back to the 1800s when Harvey's was opened. It's closed now, alas. But we went to lunch, and his daughter, Joan, was there. His agent, who you probably heard getting credit on the air, was Irving Fine, who was a long-term friend as well as an agent for Jack. Hilliard Marks was not there, and it's interesting. You hear Hilliard Marks getting credit as the producer on the show, and it's not well known, I guess, to Jack Benny freaks who would know it, but Hilliard Marks was Mary Livingston's brother. And now Mary Livingston wasn't named Mary Livingston. She changed her name several times, but wound up using her real name, which was Sadie Marks, M-A-R-X. Now, this is, as you know, no relation to the Marx Brothers at all.
Correct.
I don't think.
Nope.
Was they, John? Okay.
Nope.
So Sadie Marx changed her name to Mary Livingston and got her brother a job. Actually, I don't know if she got her brother a job. The brother might have been there first as the producer of the show. So there's a whole crowd of us there.
Well, wait. Back up a minute. Do you know how this guy actually got Jack Benny to sit down with you for lunch? How did he make that happen? Do you know?
Well, I never asked him, but I assume the following based on what he told me afterwards. He never said, I called this person or I did that, but I'm assuming he got in touch with Irving Fine, who was Jack's manager. You really couldn't pick up the phone and call Jack Benny, or maybe you could if you knew the number. But Irving Fine was certainly available. It was listed the talent agent in Hollywood. And I don't know what Chuck said to Irving Fine to convince him to let me do this, because Irving Fine knew about me and didn't think too kindly about me selling old radio shows of Jack Benny.
Oh. Did that come up at lunch?
In a roundabout way. When he first walked in, I recognized him, and I didn't know, not being instantly a legend in my own time, whether he recognized me. And I said a really clever line like, "Hello, I'm Dave Goldin." And he said, "Yeah, I know who you are." So from that one line, you could interpret a whole bunch of things.
Okay. All right.
So I really didn't know how Chuck managed to convince Irving Fine to let me do this, and I presume Jack knew about it also. So here we are at lunch. Now, don't ask me what was on the menu.
No, I don't care about what was on the menu. I care about what the conversation was.
Strangely enough, I couldn't think of what to ask him. What do you ask Jack Benny? Are you really cheap? No, of course he really wasn't cheap. One question I remember asking Jack was, there's been a revival in interest in radio. I was thinking in the back of my mind, the reissues of The Shadow and The Green Hornet, and my question was, did you ever reconsider doing something in radio again? And he had a great answer. It was no. And that was it.
No.
Radio was past him, or he was past radio, and he was more or less retired. Now we're talking about, I would say August of 1974.
Okay, that's not long before he passed away.
That's right. He died in December, I think, of 1974.
Yes.
I asked, one of the other questions I asked was, how are you feeling? And he said, I have a stiffness in one of my pinkies, which makes it difficult to play the violin, but it doesn't hurt, and other than that, I'm in pretty good shape. I'm not sure what Jack died of.
Pancreatic cancer.
Okay, that's a wicked one, that's for sure. And I would suspect he knew he had it, because you usually do know you have that one.
Yeah, and especially since this was like 5 months before he passed away.
Yeah, so I would assume he knew he had a limited time. And as a matter of fact, he was going around the country. What was he doing in Washington, D.C.? By the way, a lot of these fantasies involved Washington, D.C., because that's where fantasy fulfillment was located. So here we are in Washington, D.C., and Jack was going around the country at the time performing with symphony orchestras for the benefit of the musicians. His fee was all donated to the musicians in the orchestras at which he appeared. And he was in Washington to appear with the Washington Symphony at a place called Wolf Trap, which is a funny name for a very nice auditorium. And I was invited to sit next to Joan during his concert performance. And I have to tell you one great Jack Benny joke that nobody will know who's only seen him on television or heard him on the radio. This is something he, I think, only did during live concerts. And the conductor of the symphony would introduce our special guest, and Jack Benny would walk out and sit next to the concertmaster, the first violinist, and he'd be introduced, and he's going to play something. I think it might have been from Sarasate, but I'm not sure. It wasn't Love and Bloom. So he's introduced as a soloist, and he stands up and walks to the front of the stage, and then walks back again and asks the concertmaster for something, which the concertmaster gives him. And Jack turns around to the audience and says, "Forgive me, I forgot my mute." And I didn't even know violins had mutes, but anyway, the concertmaster gives him the mute. And Jack goes up to the stage, front of the stage, and plays a solo for the first selection. I believe he was, now I'm no critic, but he was a competent violinist at this time. I don't think he would give Isaac Stern a run for his money or Nathan Milstein, but he was a violinist, and he did okay. So he then, after the first selection, says a few words to the audience, and as he's speaking, he takes the mute from the violin and slips it in his pocket. As he's speaking, the concertmaster gets up from his chair, doesn't say anything, walks over to Jack, sticks his hand in his pocket, and takes his mute back and walks back to the chair. Now, here is essence of Jack Benny. It's a cheap joke without saying a word. And the audience loved it, and I loved it too. And apparently that was a common bit that Jack did at live concerts. So that's something you would never know about. At least I hope you would never know about. Now, someone from a Jack Benny club is going to say, well, he did that in 1937. I don't know what he did in 1937, but this was a thrill to see. He was a good violinist.
All right, so back to the lunch with Jack Benny. Do you have any other memories of anything that was said or discussed?
Well, there was some mention about who was going to pick up the check, but that will be my secret.
Oh, okay. And you paid Chuck $2,000 for this lunch with Jack Benny, correct?
I hate when you put it that way.
Well, it's factual, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's factual, yes, but don't let the facts get in the way of a great story. It was expensive, and actually, the $2,000 is approximate. I don't really remember what it was, but this was paying for a fantasy to happen to me. It's something I always wanted.
I got
you
it.
Can't put a price on it.
I'm not saying you overpaid. I'm just commenting on this so that the people who listen to this will understand what it took to have lunch with Jack Benny.
Well, I could have done it for less had I negotiated, but who wants to dicker with Jack Benny?
Probably not a good idea.
No. Let's get to the radio show.
All right, so the show that we're going to listen to is one that you selected. I have not heard this, so we're going to listen to it together. It's from April 12th, 1953. Is there any particular reason, without spoiling what goes on in the show, is there any particular reason why you picked this one? Why is this one of your all-time favorites?
I guess it's because I like it.
Okay.
And I haven't heard it for a while. It's hard to find a Jack Benny dad show.
Right.
You could probably listen to a lot of them and say, I like this one better than that one. But he has such a magnificent lineup of writers who were really good at radio writing, and the concept. I won't tell you what the main skit is about. Let the listeners find out for themselves. But it's such a ludicrous idea that only Jack could pull it off.
All right. Well, with that, we will turn on the program and we'll all listen to it together. Your microphone will be off, as will mine, until the show is over, but we will both be listening to it at the same time, as will everyone listening to this podcast. So if you're ready for that, sit back, relax, and listen to the Jack Benny Show from CBS Radio, April 12th, 1953.
The Jack Benny Program, transcribed and presented by Lucky Strike. You know, for real smoking enjoyment, nothing beats better taste. And
Lucky's taste better.
Cleaner, fresher, smoother.
Lucky's taste better.
Cleaner, fresher, smoother. For Lucky Strike means fine tobacco, richer tasting, fine tobacco.
Lucky's taste better.
Cleaner, fresher, smoother. Lucky Strike, Lucky Strike.
this is Don Wilson. Friends, no doubt about it, your enjoyment of a cigarette depends on its taste. For nothing beats better taste. And Lucky's taste better. Cleaner, fresher, smoother. You see, Lucky's better taste starts right off with the fine, mild, good-tasting tobacco that goes into Lucky's. And then Lucky's are made better to give you a cleaner, fresher, smoother-tasting smoke. Yes, sir, only fine tobacco in a better-made cigarette can give you all the deep-down smoking enjoyment you want. So why not switch to Lucky Strike? Yes, be happy. Go Lucky. You'll find
Lucky's taste better.
Cleaner, fresher, smoother. Lucky Strike, Lucky Strike.
the Lucky Lucky Strike program starring Jack Benny with Mary Livingston, Rochester, Dennis Day, Bob Crosby, and yours truly, Don Wilson. And now, let's go out to Jack Benny's house in Beverly Hills. It's such a lovely morning that outside on the front lawn, we hear the splashing of birds in the bird bath. While upstairs, we hear the sound of the shower.
Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I've got a wonderful feeling that everything's going my way.
Rochester, I'm through showering. You can stop singing now.
Okay.
Say, Rochester, I don't know where you're buying soap lately, but that new bar I just used didn't lather at all.
I didn't know you took a new bar of soap. Did you get it out of the service closet?
No, I found it in the kitchen.
In the drawer?
No, on a dish near the drain board.
Well, congratulations, boys.
Why?
You have just showered with a peeled potato.
A peeled... Imagine showering with a peeled potato.
You now have the skin that lamb chops love to touch.
Never mind that. Here, take this towel and dry my back, will you please?
Yes, sir.
Ah, that feels good.
Boss, you sure have well-developed shoulders.
Oh, thank you, Rochester.
Yes, sir. Did you ever do any fighting?
Oh, yes, a long time ago. As a matter of fact, I won 22 fights. I was known as the Waukegan Wildcat.
Waukegan Wildcat.
Yes.
Why did you quit?
Well, they made us put on gloves, and I couldn't scratch anymore. So I got a manicure and retired. Now, Rochester, while I get dressed, how about fixing me some breakfast?
Yes, sir. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I've got a wonderful... Oh, good morning, Polly.
Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. Ah, I've got a wonderful feeling that something is coming my way.
She had a feeling, all right. She laid an egg. Good girl, Polly. Come in. Come in. Oh, what a beautiful morning.
Oh, hello, Rochester.
Oh, good morning, Miss Livingston. Come right in.
You must be in a good mood. I heard you singing as you were coming to the door.
Oh, I always sing when it's getting close to my payday.
Really? When is your payday?
September 1st.
September 1st, but this is only April. Why do you sing so long before payday?
There ain't much to sing about after.
I know what you mean.
Oh, good morning, Mary.
Hello, Jack. You know, it's so early, I thought you'd still be in bed.
In bed? Are you kidding? I've already taken my shower. Rochester, how about breakfast?
Coming up.
Mary, would you care for something to eat?
No, thanks. I'm not hungry.
You know, Mary, you look kind of cute this morning. You really do. How about a kiss?
Okay. That's funny.
What?
I just said I wasn't hungry, and now I've got a craving for potatoes.
Well, we've got the cleanest ones in town.
What?
Nothing. Rochester, just make my breakfast.
Wait a minute, Jack. What is Rochester talking about?
All right, I'll tell you. This morning when I was taking a shower, I thought I picked up a cake of soap, but it turned out to be a peeled potato. It could happen to anybody.
That couldn't happen to Gracie Allen.
All right. So I showered with a potato. What do you want me to do?
Kiss me, I'm hungry.
Never mind. Rochester, is breakfast ready?
I just put the coffee on. What else would you like?
Well, I'd like a little bacon and one fried EGG.
Yes, sir. A little bacon and one fried EGG.
Jack, what's the idea of the spelling? Why don't you just say you want a little bacon and one fried...
Don't say it, Mary. Don't say it. We always spell it. You know, Polly lays an EGG every day, and she'd go crazy if she ever found out we were eating them.
Oh.
EGG, EGG.
Isn't that cute?
EGG, EGG, EG... EGG? Hey!
Polly, calm down. Rochester, no eggs. Fix me some pancakes.
Yes, sir.
Now, who can that be?
Oh, I'll get it. Oh, hello, Dennis.
Hello, Mary. Is Mr. Benny in?
Yes, he's having breakfast.
Well, I'm sure glad he's here because I got plenty to tell him.
Dennis, what's the matter?
14 years this has been going on, and I've had all I can take. I've stood enough, believe me.
Well, Dennis, what is it?
I wouldn't mind if it was only once or twice, but every week, the same thing, week in and week out. After all, what does he take me for? I'm fed up, I tell you, fed up.
Well, Dennis, I don't know what's on your mind, but obviously you should talk to Mr. Benny.
Oh, I'll say I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to tell him off.
Well, come on, he's in the breakfast room.
Oh, hello, Dennis.
Hello, Mr. Benny. Gee, you're looking well today.
Thanks, kid. What'd you come over for?
Oh, I just happened to be in the neighborhood, and I thought I'd drop in.
Well, I'm glad you did.
Dennis, what are you waiting for? Why don't you tell him off?
What are you trying to do, start something?
Yes, Mary, what's the matter with you?
What's the matter with me?
Yeah.
You've been mistreating Dennis and taking advantage of him for 14 years.
What?
And he's had enough of it. After all, what do you take him for?
Mary, what are you trying to do, make trouble or something?
That's telling her, Mr. Benny.
Now, wait a minute. Look, Dennis, I'm going to straighten this thing out right now. Didn't you come to the door and tell me that you were mad at Mr. Benny?
Uh-huh.
And didn't you tell me that you were fed up with the way he was treating you?
Uh-huh.
And didn't you say you were going to tell him plenty?
Uh-huh.
Then why is it when you walked up to Mr. Benny you were so nice to him?
When I saw his long fingernails, I lost my nerve.
Stop being silly. Now, Dennis, I want to hear the song you're going to do on the program, so go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Suddenly the night was very still. Suddenly our touch became a thrill. And suddenly I knew I was part of you. And yet I told my heart, be still, be still. Then suddenly your lips were kissing mine. Suddenly my world became divine. For when I looked around, then I knew I'd found eternity with you. So suddenly.
Now, that was very good, Dennis. It'll be fine on the program. Say, Rochester, is my toast ready yet?
Not yet, boss. It's in the toaster.
Well, say, Mr. Benny, what's this I hear about you going up to San Francisco for 3 weeks?
That's right, Dennis. Next Sunday, I do my television show, and my guest star is Fred Allen. Immediately after my TV show, I fly to San Francisco and open at the Curran Theater on April 20th, and I'll be there for 3 weeks.
Jack, who are you going to have on your stage show?
Well, Mary, I'm going to have the Will Maston Trio featuring Sammy Davis Jr., Giselle McKenzie, and an all-star cast, including Frank Remley.
Frank Remley? What's he going to do?
Nothing, but the stage would look so empty without him lying there. It's going to be a great show. Rochester, what was that?
The toast, it flew out the window.
Oh, my goodness. That piece of toast landed on the lawn, and it'll attract ants. I'll be right back. Now, let's see. It flew out through that window, so it should be right on the lawn. I don't see it. Maybe it flew out into the street. Funny, I don't see it around here either. There's the Coleman's garbage can. It hasn't got a lid on it. I wonder if the toast could have gone in there. Gee, I gotta find her. We'll be loaded with ants. There's several pieces of toast in here.
Jack!
Huh? Oh, hello, Bob. I was just looking for a piece of toast.
Well, Jack, why didn't you tell me that things were that rough? Why, I'd work for nothing.
Bob, you don't understand.
Well, Jack, you can be honest with me. Come on, I'll take you down to the market and buy you enough food to last for 2 months.
Bob, I'm trying to tell you that... What'd you say? Huh?
Well, I said that I'd take you down to the market and buy you enough food for 2 months.
Jack, come on in. Your breakfast is ready.
You eat it. Bob and I are going shopping.
Hey, now, wait a minute. You mean you have food in the house and yet you are going to let me try to buy some for you?
Bob, I was just going to teach you a lesson for being so silly. Now, come on in the house.
Hello, Mr. Crosby.
Hello, Rochester. Hiya, Mary.
Hello, Bob.
Hiya, Bob.
Hiya, Dennis.
Sit down, kids. Mary, pour everybody some coffee. will you?
Okay.
Make mine black.
Black? Dennis, I thought you always took cream. Why do you want a black?
I'm in mourning. My uncle died.
Dennis, you're kidding.
No, I'm not. He committed suicide.
Suicide?
Yeah.
Did he shoot himself?
No.
Did he hang himself?
No.
Well, did he take poison?
No.
Well, for heaven's sakes, how did he do it?
He bought a bottle of Stop-It and poked himself to death.
What?
Joke's over. Pass the cream.
You know, Bob, I think it's only fair that I warn you.
Well, warn me about what?
Before Phil Harris met Dennis, he didn't drink a drop. Everything happened after... There's someone at the back door. Rochester, give everybody coffee. I'll answer it.
Hello, Mr. Benny.
Oh, the man from the bakery shop, huh?
Yeah, I got the stuff that you ordered. Some donuts, some chocolate cake, some pastry, and a half a dozen cimarron rolls.
You still can't pronounce it, can you? Look, it isn't cimarron, it's cinnamon. Now, let me ask you something. Maybe this'll help you pronounce it. How are these rolls made?
Well, you take some flour, sugar, eggs, and do you want to know all the ingredients?
Oh, look, it isn't ingredients, it's ingredients. Yes, I want to know all of them then.
Well, there's flour, sugar, eggs, shortening, and cinnamon.
That's it. Now, look, take your time, think. Okay, now let me hear you say it.
Ingredients.
I don't mean ingredients. I'm trying to get you to say Cimarron. I mean cinnamon.
Why don't you order something else? You drive me nuts.
All right, just give me my stuff. Thanks and goodbye.
Bye.
Jack, who is that?
Oh, that silly guy from the bakery. The fellow who insists upon saying Cimarron rolls. Well, here you are, kid. You can have some of these with your coffee. They're nice and fresh.
Wait a minute, Jack. He's right.
What do you mean he's right?
Well, look at that label on this paper box. These are genuine Cimarron rolls, named after J.P. Cimarron, founder of the Cimarron Baking Company.
What?
These Cimarron rolls should not be confused with ordinary cinnamon rolls, which are made from entirely different ingredients.
Well, Jack, I guess that'll hold you.
Hold me nothing. That silly guy had that label printed himself just because he can't say cinnamon. He must be crazy.
Well, boss, there's one way of finding out.
How?
Ask him if he showers with a peeled potato.
Now, let's cut out all of this nonsense. Do you kids want the rolls with your coffee or not?
Oh, I'll have some.
So live.
Dennis, how about... Dennis, what are you stirring your coffee with?
My paper-made pen.
Dennis.
Well, don't worry, it's leak-proof. What? Soap's over. Pass me a spoon.
Stop being silly.
Boy, I don't know how long Phil stood at Jackson, but I'm slipping. Get the ice.
You'll need more than ice before you get through it. There's the front door.
You want me to get it, boss?
No, I'll get it. All I did was shower with a peeled potato. The whole day is mixed up. Yes?
How do you do? My name is Martindale. I represent a law firm that specializes in settling estates and tracing legal heirs.
Legal heirs?
Yes. Does Mr. Jack Benny live here?
Oh, I'm Jack Benny.
Well, then it's very possible that you're the man I'm looking for. May I come in?
Yes. Have a seat, Mr. Martindale.
Mr. Benny, if you're the man we're looking for, an aunt whom you have never seen has left you a legacy of $5,000.
$5,000? Hey, kids! Kids, come on in here!
What is it, Jack?
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, what?
You tell them, Mr. Martindale.
Certainly. We have reason to believe that Mr. Benny's Aunt Matilda, whom he has never met, left him $5,000.
Hey, that's wonderful.
Yes. Where's the money? The money. My Aunt Matilda. The money.
I've got the check right here in my briefcase. But first I'll have to verify a few facts.
Oh, of course. Go ahead, mister. Ask me anything you want. Good old Aunt Matilda. Oh, darn it. Excuse me. I have to answer the legacy. I mean the money. I mean the phone. Hello?
Hello, Jack. This is Don.
Goodbye, Don. I mean, call me back later. I'm very busy right now.
Oh, I can't call you later. The Sportsman Quartet is here, and they're leaving town in a few minutes, and we've got to settle something very important. Now, we've got the commercial two ways, and I don't know which way is better.
But, Don...
You're the only one who can help us. It'll only take a minute. Boys, come on over to the phone. Let him hear it the first way.
Don, look...
Now, listen, Jack. Listen closely. Take it, fellas.
Be happy, go lucky, be happy, go lucky, strike me happy, go lucky, get better taste today.
Beedly poo 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 poo.
Look, Don.
Now, that was the first way. Now, fellas, give it to him the second way.
Don, I haven't got
go
time
lucky,
for this.
be happy,
I've got a man
go lucky, strike me happy, go lucky, get better taste today.
Poodly poo 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 poo. Well, now, Jack, which way did you like better?
Which way did I like better? Don, I didn't hear any difference.
You didn't?
No.
Well, for heaven's sakes, why don't you pay attention?
Look, Don.
Fellas, the first way again.
Don, look, I got a band waiting for me.
Be happy, go
I haven't
lucky,
got time
strike, be
for it.
happy, go lucky, get better taste today.
Peedly poo 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 poo. Now, that was the first way.
I know.
Now, fellas, the second way.
Don, I don't care.
Be happy, go lucky, be happy, go lucky, strike, be happy, go lucky, get better taste today.
Poodly poo 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 poo. Okay, Jack, which way do you like better?
Don, are you crazy? Both ways were exactly alike.
What do you mean exactly alike? I sit up all night working this thing out, and you say there isn't any difference.
Well, there isn't.
There's a big difference. In the first one, when the boys finished singing, I went peedly poo 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 poo.
Uh-huh.
And in the second one, I went poodly poo 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 poo.
Don, you called me to decide between Peedledee and Poodledee?
That's right, Jack. Which way do you like it better?
Well...
Fellas, the first way
No,
again.
Don, no. I've already reached a decision.
Good. What is it?
It is my considered opinion that nothing beats Harry Von Zell. Goodbye. I'm sorry about this interruption, Mr. Martindale.
Oh, that's quite all right, Mr. Benny.
Now, I'll answer any questions, and then you can give me the $5,000 my Aunt Matilda left to me.
Jack.
Huh?
Jack, come here a minute.
What is it, Mary?
Jack, Bob and I have been talking it over. If your Aunt Matilda never saw you, why should she leave you all that money?
Because she was my own flesh and blood.
Jack, if she had any of your blood, she wouldn't leave anything to anybody.
Oh, quiet. Okay, Mr. Martindale, I'll answer those questions now.
Very well. Mr. Benny, were you born in Waukegan, Illinois?
Yes. You see, Mary? You see, it's me. It's me.
And at the age of 6, you started to practice a musical instrument.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And that instrument was?
The violin. I still play the violin. I play the violin.
Now,
the fiddle, the violin. Yes,
you graduated from Central Elementary School and went to Waukegan High School.
That's right. Right. I played the violin at the high school. Right.
At the age of 17, you left Waukegan, became an actor, and went into...
Vaudeville. I went into vaudeville. I played the violin in the vaudeville. That's
yes. Yes, that's right. Mr. Benny, I'm sure that further questioning is unnecessary. I'm firmly convinced that you're the man we're looking for.
Where's the money? Where's the money?
Just a minute. Here's one question I neglected to check. How old are you?
39.
39? Well, that's strange. Every other answer seemed to fit, but the Jack Benny we're looking for was born in 1894. Now, that would make him 59.
But, Mr. Martindale, it must be me. There was no other Jack Benny born in Waukegan who plays a violin.
I'm sorry, but the Jack Benny we're looking for, who gets this $5,000, was born in 1894 and is 59 years old.
Well, 59?
Yes?
Well...
This is a tale well calculated to keep you in suspense.
Mr. Martindale, I'm sorry, but I'm not the Jack Benny you're looking for. I am only 39.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Benny. I was hoping my search was over. Oh, good day.
Goodbye, Mr. Martindale. Ya-da-dee-da-dum, da-dee-da-dum, da-dum, bum-bee-da-da-dum.
Jack.
Da-dum, dum-dee-da-da-dum.
Jack.
Da-da-da-dum.
Jack.
What is it, Mary?
I can't believe what I just heard.
What do you mean you can't believe it?
Jack, all you had to do was to say you were 59 and you would have gotten the money.
Uh-huh.
But by insisting that you were 39, you lost $5,000.
That's right.
I can't understand it. Why?
Mary, I may not be a spendthrift, but I know a bargain when I see one.
Bargain?
Where else can you buy 20 years for $5,000? Come on, kid, let's have some coffee and cinnamon roll.
Ladies and gentlemen, our forests are among our most vital resources. Last year, through carelessness, forest fires destroyed millions of acres of valuable timber. This shameful waste weakens America. Protect our forests. Don't toss away lighted matches or cigarettes. Make sure every campfire is completely out. Remember, only you can prevent forest fires. Thank you. Jack will be back in just a moment, but first, nothing beats better taste. And remember,
Lucky's taste better.
Cleaner, fresher, smoother.
Lucky's taste better.
Cleaner, fresher, smoother. For Lucky Strike means fine tobacco, richer tasting, fine tobacco.
Lucky's taste better.
Cleaner, fresher, smoother. Lucky Strike, Lucky Strike.
friends, it just stands to reason. The cigarette for you to smoke is the one that tastes better. Because when all is said and done, nothing beats better taste. And Lucky's taste better. Cleaner, fresher, and smoother. Here's why. Lucky's better taste really begins with fine tobacco. Most anyone can tell you, LSMFT, Lucky Strike means fine tobacco. Fine, light, naturally mild tobacco with a wonderful aroma and an even better taste. And Lucky's also taste better because they're made better. They're made round and firm and fully packed to draw freely and smoke evenly. Yes, made better to give you a cleaner, fresher, smoother tasting smoke. So enjoy the better taste that only fine tobacco and a better made cigarette can give. When you buy cigarettes, ask for a carton of Lucky Strike.
Be happy, go lucky, get better taste today.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes another program, and we'll be with you next week at the... Excuse me. Hello? Yes, this is Jack Benny. Yes, Fred Allen is going to be my guest on my television program next Sunday, April 19th. That's right. What? Yes, he'll get paid in cash right after the show. You're welcome.
Jack, who is that?
The manager of the hotel where Fred's staying. Good night, folks.
Jack Benny program is written by Sam Perrin, Milt Josephsberg, George Balzer, John Tackaberry, and produced and transcribed by Hilliard Marks. Be sure to hear The American Way with Horace Height for Lucky Strike every Thursday over this same station. Consult your newspaper for the time. Jack Benny program is brought to you by Lucky Strike, product of the American Tobacco Company, America's leading manufacturer of cigarettes.
This is the CBS Radio Network.
Well, yeah, that was an interesting program. A couple things there. You heard Joseph Kearns in there, and of course Mel Blanc. The joke that got probably the biggest laugh. Dave, stop-et. Do you know what a stop-et was?
It was deodorant, wasn't it?
Yeah, you knew. I didn't know anything. So while we were listening to this, we looked it up because I was trying to figure out what in the world was that joke all about. And stop-et was a deodorant, and the tagline in their ads was, "Poof, the odor would be gone." So Dennis Day says he poofed himself to death. And when I heard that, I thought, did he say pooped himself to death? What did he say? And so we looked it up and figured it out.
Well, it was obvious that I would know that because I'm a stinker.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, that was a fun show. All right. We are going to wrap up this segment of the Good Old Days of Radio show. We'll be back next week with the legendary David Goldin as our continued guest. And for the next show, we're not going to do a crazy comedy. It's not going to be Jack Benny. It's going to be an episode of Escape, one of the great drama programs of all time. And we'll talk about that next week, but that's what it's going to be. So in the meantime, if you want to know more of Dave Goldin's Radio Goldin Index and look up programs and all that, just go on the internet and look up radiogoldenindex.com, and it'll all come up for you, and you can research all kinds of shows. So until next Tuesday at this same time, this is John Teftiller and the Good Old Days of Radio Show, and thank you, Dave Goldin, for appearing today, and we'll be back next week.